We're talking about resource-led strategy today. Yesterday, we mentioned that in order for a firm to have a look at its strategy or formulate its strategy, it basically had to look at its strengths and weaknesses, and also look at its opportunities and threats. So in fact, yesterday was really more focused on opportunities and threats. In other words, external, what's happening in the business environment. But today, we're looking more at strengths and weaknesses. We're looking at the firm's internal characteristics and how that sort of helps them shape their strategy. In fact, a lot of people say, there's no such thing as just one type of approach. Ideally, you should be combining resource-led strategy and also market-driven strategy. Okay, so market-driven strategy pertains to what is happening in the environment. All right, let's go on. So when we say resource-led strategy, what we're really trying to say here are these are the tangible and intangible resources that we already have in our firm that we can utilize to create, a competitive strategy or competitive advantage, in fact. So the source of this can come from different functions like marketing, operations, research and development, the information function, the finance, and human resources. But you'll notice when you read through the specifics of these that a number are tangible. So what we mean by tangible is there's a physical presence to this. You can actually touch it. For example, location and plant. The location of your factory, for example, your capital equipment, your products and services. But then if you look at it carefully, many of these are no longer tangible. A lot of them are actually intangible. Now, you could argue that a patent, it's more than just a piece of paper, correct? It is actually, if you've been granted a patent, that means that you have protection over this invention that you have. The sales force, you could argue that's also tangible. Distribution channels, that's also a combination of tangible and intangible. Okay, so I think probably the most important, the most popular and also important resource we have is our brand. And I think I'll look for that here. It's here. Our brand name and our reputation. So for example, Coca-Cola, the value of Coca-Cola as a company is not so much its factory, its production line, it's the bottles that it has, even the formula. I would say that the value of Coca-Cola is its brand reputation and brand name. So we'll take that up today. We'll discuss more about what brands are, but we're also looking at things like our human resources and information. We'll see how information can become, in fact, a valuable resource. All right, so a really good approach to studying whether our resources are really a source of our competitive advantage or could be a potential for the source of our competitive advantage is to look at it using the VRIO framework. And, so we've just talked about the VRIO approach. And another approach is the McKinsey 7S. Now, the McKinsey 7S, if you look at it, it's really more looking at your strengths and weaknesses in terms of intangible. So they're not talking about hard assets here or even brands. They're really talking more about the shared value within the company, your culture, the way your staff works. And there's another video that I want to show you about this really valuable framework. But It's really easy to remember because it's just all letter S. But aside from that, it just gives you a good structure in realizing which one of these are your strengths and which one of these are your weaknesses. So let's watch that video now. Do you have any questions about so far that what we've talked about? So we've talked about VRIO and also the 7S framework. Both models can be used to look at, again, our internal strengths and our internal weaknesses as well. And how do we know which one of them is in fact causing our organization to fail or perhaps to not achieve its full potential. I think a really important thing to mention is that the 7S framework, you can see the lines that connect each one. They're very much connected. These little factors here are actually connected to each other. And once you change one of these elements, you often influence the other elements. As mentioned, for example, the leader's leadership style affects the skills of the staff. I think I need to turn on my video somehow. And how do I turn on my video? There you go. All right. Okay, let's go on with our lecture, unless you guys have any questions. No questions? Okay. All right, so let's talk about core competencies. And in fact, I talked about this yesterday, and we said there's a little bit of a difference between competencies and capabilities, core competencies and strategic capabilities. Can you guys remember what the difference is? Anyone? Okay, I'll answer my own question then. Competencies pertain more specifically to products or specific processes, specific systems, specific functions. So for example, I might have a core competence in marketing, right? Because I've done that before. Most of my career is in marketing. Therefore, that would be my personal core competence. But capabilities is really beyond that. So it is actually a broader scope. And I can actually develop my core competencies to the point where I can use these competencies and bring them to other products, to other industries. So when I start doing that, if I have a way of thinking of, let's say, a very customer-focused marketing competency, I can use that competency and turn it into a capability so that it applies to not just a specific skill. So in other words, the core competencies can grow into major capabilities. And I think I can explain that a little bit more. So here you have an example, Canon, which is the camera manufacturer, but among their core competencies will be precision mechanics in fiber optics and microelectronics. And they've used these core competencies into strategic capabilities to the point that they can use these competencies for different products, not just cameras, but photocopiers, health printing, actually computer printers, and even health, health machines or equipment. So here's another good example, General Electric. So GE started as a light company. They were started by Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb. So he was a very famous innovator and inventor. And he was making machines basically, but their main I think approach then was to make light bulbs, and then they branched out into appliances like refrigerators, washing machines. But then beyond that, Now their most profitable businesses are power generation, so coal-fired plants or um, hydropower plants and things like those can be made by GE. Aviation, so GE has a big business in making jet engines, for example. So it could be a A380 or a 747 airplane made by Boeing, but then the engines themselves are made by companies like GE or Rolls-Royce. And as I was saying yesterday, as the video was saying yesterday, that the profits are actually not, most of the profits in this industry are not made by the airlines. They're actually made by the suppliers of the airlines. So GE is one of them. GE also makes healthcare equipment such as an MRI machine, so diagnostic machine. They make a lot of that. So high technology type of machines that help us help doctors diagnose patients' illnesses. So they're also very big in renewable energy, such as wind power. Um, what others? Well, nuclear power plants, I was going to say, but that's in their power generation. So because nuclear power plant is not renewable, right? So renewable energy includes things like wind power, wave power, solar energy, et cetera, et cetera. So they're very big in that. And in fact, these are their most profitable business segments. And you might ask yourself, how in the world did a company with a core competence of making light bulbs turn this core competence into capabilities that they can be successful in many different types of industries? So really, the answer to that is GE is using things, capabilities that they can use from one industry to the other. An example of this is Six Sigma, which I think I do have a video.
Six Sigma is a quality management methodology that helps businesses improve current processes, products, or services by discovering and eliminating defects. Members of Six Sigma focus on streamlining quality control in manufacturing or business processes with the goal of improving consistency, productivity, and efficiency. Six Sigma projects include 5 stages that guide businesses through the process of defining goals, measuring and identifying requirements, analyzing processes for defects, improving errors, and maintaining that control in the long run. Members of Six Sigma slowly climb the ladder to take on more ownership of managing Six Sigma projects in the organization. The Six Sigma methodology uses a ranking system to establish clear leadership roles for quality management. It starts with green belts, who are new to the methodology and learning it alongside their current role. Black belts are the next level up. They mentor green belts and are also responsible for executing on specific tasks within the Six Sigma strategy. Once you reach the master black belt level, you'll focus solely on Six Sigma projects. You'll either mentor green belts or help champions, who are the next level up in the hierarchy. Champions handpick master black belts and are responsible for executing on the executive leadership's vision. The highest tier is executive leadership, which includes the CEO and other executive management staff charged with developing the vision for Six Sigma implementation. The best Six Sigma projects have a clear process of inputs and outputs, and you should never go into it with a predetermined idea of how it will turn out. Ultimately, a Six Sigma project should help reduce variation and make it easy for anyone in the organization to follow.
All right, so let's interrupt that. I didn't think we needed to watch the whole thing, but it just gives you an idea of this approach that GE is using. And that's a capability they're using from one industry to another. So it's more than just a competency, it's actually a capability, because they can move it from one industry to the other. And you might be asking, what does Six Sigma mean? This is an approach invented by Motorola, actually. And what it means is your aim is to try to get the number of defects down to 3 defects for every 1 million products that you make, making sure that there are only 3 of those products are actually defective, as opposed to all the rest of the 1 million other products. So that's a really incredible quality. That's 99.9999, whatever it is, of you know, perfect products. Okay, so another approach we could look at is case three-strand framework for evaluating or auditing strategic resources. In other words, when we say audit, by the way, it means to take a look, um, uh, evaluating what you're doing, and also what you've done in the past, and having a look at whether it can be improved or not. So that's where really the function of auditing comes from. The accounting and auditing function, actually, it means that you're having a look at the past and even what's currently being done. So in case framework, we're looking at the architecture of the firm, so the internal and external relationship links, the reputation, which includes branding, and which we'll talk about in a little while, and innovation, the capability of the organization to innovate and keep coming out with products that are better than the previous products. All right, so another one of these factors that we looked at, one of these resources that we looked at, that is really important for us to develop and turn into a strength is, of course, our people as a resource, or our human resource strategies. I'm not going to go into detail in this one, knowing that there are many other units in the college that talk about HR and organization behavior. But I will just stress that in order for this to become a strength, the people in the firm need to have the right kind of culture, and that culture is built from commitment, its competencies, its being very cost effective. In other words, you're making sure you're not overpaying your talent, and also that your people have sympathy with the aims or the organization. In other words, they share the same values as the organization. I also want to stress that they have to work well together, and that is what we mean by teamwork. So organizations that have really, really good employees, but if they don't work well together, will not be able to turn that into a strength. There are two recognized approaches to human resource management, and that is the hard approach, and the other is the soft approach. So the hard approach uses more, for motivation, it uses more coercive techniques. It uses hard rewards like money and bonuses to motivate people, while the soft approach uses for motivation, achievement. It uses values. It uses source of pride as a way to drive people. The soft approach is also means that their emphasis is on empowerment, getting people to do their own thing and not being commanded to do what the boss wants them to do. So there's a little bit more freedom to make decisions, but it also means that you're training your people to have these competencies and these capabilities. The hard approach, on the other hand, has a more centralized approach to control, which means that decisions are usually made by higher management. So they don't really allow employees to make decisions on their own. Now, a lot of people might think that one is better than the other, but it really depends on the situation of the company. And let's talk about that for a moment. If we can pause my record. Okay. Okay, so the next slide after the approaches to human resource is the learning organization. So this is one of the things that they're realizing is that the strength of the organization depends a lot on how well it is learning. So especially nowadays with the way things are changing on the outside, the environment changes so quickly. The company that learns the quickest and knows how to share this information and share this knowledge can become quite successful. So the basic arguments would be quality, technology, and product and service are actually very widely available around the world. And even if you don't have the technology, you can easily acquire it. Have a look at China over the years and how it's been able to copy technology from other countries and use it for themselves. And even if the United States tries to protect its technology, its military know-how, China is able to copy that technology and even improve on it. And you can see this, many technology companies are already China-based. Um, so this is something that you can easily learn. So therefore, the next big thing has to come in. You need to continuously improve, and you need to be continuously learning. Change the way the quicker you are in changing, the better it is. So that's what we mean by speed of change is essential. Failure to keep up with change can destroy the firm. So it's a matter of survival in many cases. If you're not able to make that change very quickly, a competitor can come in and basically leave you behind. Case in point, let's have a look at Nokia. Nokia used to be the number one mobile phone maker, but when Apple came around with their smartphone, they just shifted the market, and unfortunately, Nokia wasn't able to keep up with that change in style. Now, I don't think it's a case of technology. Nokia was actually very good with technology. The problem really is that they weren't able to capture the imagination of their target market. So in other words, they didn't come up with products, even if the technology was good, but if the design of the products and the functionality of these products didn't capture the needs and wants of their target market, unlike Apple. So the third argument is an organization can only adapt if it is first able to learn. So the quicker you are at learning, then the better you are at adapting to change. So another resource that's really come up and coming nowadays is information and information technology. And in fact, information technology, as mentioned here, can result, if you use this very carefully, it can result in you developing a competitive advantage. Although I would say it may not be sustainable. So after a while, people will gain that technology and basically can copy that technology and basically compete with you. But think about information. In fact, information is probably harder to copy. Let's look at Facebook. Can you imagine the amount of information that Facebook has on its customers, on you? So, for example, Anya, do you have Facebook? I think you do. I've seen your face in Facebook.
Yeah, I do.
So, once you're into Facebook, you might be surprised, or you may not be surprised, but it has actually learns a lot about what you are as a person, the choices that you make, your interests. In fact, I'm sure it knows more about you than your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or even your mother or your father. All right. So the things that once you get into it, Facebook knows where you are. Facebook knows what links you click on, who your friends are, and it can suggest products to you to purchase. It can suggest friends for you to link up with. So it's incredible the amount of information that they're gathering. And in fact, this is a huge source of competitive advantage for Facebook. Uh, Information technology can also be another source. And information technology is just the enabler that enables Facebook to gain or to use this information, to gather that information and to use it. So IT can change industry structure. And a great example of this is the taxi transportation industry and Uber. And basically, IT has changed the way taxis operate. And taxis have had no choice but to try to copy what Uber has been trying to do. So let's say if the taxi companies here in Melbourne, they actually do also have applications similar to Uber. But Uber is way ahead in terms of their style, in terms of their features. So people are more used to using Uber's application than it is than the other taxi companies. IT can provide companies with competitive weapons. And again, an example of that would be Facebook and even Uber. How can Uber maximize the information it has on you, and how can other applications compete with them? I forget who are the competitors of Uber, not taxis, but the other application developers.
Deliver,
Just
Menulog,
Uber. I'm not talking about food. I'm just talking about the transportation. So
Ola.
Ola, yes, that's one of them. There may be one or two other companies operating in Melbourne now.
Yeah.
Didi, yeah.
Didi.
Yeah. So these companies offer very similar services to Uber. But the big advantage is, of course, Uber has already, its application has been downloaded into everybody's phones. And so it can easily outmaneuver the new entrants that are coming in. IT can also help a company develop new businesses from existing activities. So Uber has gone into Uber Eats, correct? So it's not just now the ability to take a vehicle from one point to the other, but it can also utilize that network that it has to offer food deliveries. So really big advantage for Uber. All right, so another approach to internal analysis, if you might say, or resource analysis, is the value chain model or value chain analysis model. And what it really just says, and by the way, this is also arrived at, one of the people that developed this is also Michael Porter, who you might be familiar with the five forces. So what Michael Porter and his other professors were saying is that a business can actually be divided into two main things. Number one, its primary activities, and number two, it has also support activities. So the primary activities of, say, Woolworths or Coles begins with inbound logistics, for example. In other words, how does it get products from other manufacturers, actually not other, but from manufacturers, and how does that bring that into their stores all over Australia? And that's what we mean by inbound logistics. And there are a lot of activities that are encompassed by this, including warehousing. So for many products, Woolworths and Coles will actually store these products in a warehouse. Now, especially when the product is not as perishable, for example, a canned goods, baked beans, or something that is in a package that doesn't have to be refrigerated, then they can actually put that in a warehouse. They can negotiate with their suppliers to buy their products at a big discount by ordering in volume. So in other words, a lot of products, they can buy a lot of products and therefore drive the costs down. But then the other side to it is if it's a very highly perishable product, such as milk. So the thing with milk is fresh milk can only last, probably not even a week. So in a couple of days, it will spoil. So as soon as it is made, the key is you have to deliver it straight into the stores of Coles and for it to be sold. And whatever is not sold within a few days is simply thrown away. So those are the things that comprise inbound logistics. So a milk company will deliver straight, not to the warehouse of Coles, but straight to the store of Coles. So for example, inside the mall, the delivery truck would go, right to that mall and deliver only the products that they're expecting that store to sell for that day or the next day. And in fact, there are deliveries almost every day because, again, it's a perishable item. So all of these activities are part of the inbound logistics, and the operations would require calls to, for example, bring the product from their warehouse to the store, or even within the store itself, it may have some not warehouse, but stock rooms where you need to bring out the stock and bring them to refill the shelves of the grocery. So you can imagine that there's only limited space on the shelves, and if you run out of that, you need to get more stock from the stock room, which might be in the same building as well. And by the way, this is why we had a shortage of toilet paper, if you remember that. And the reason for that is toilet paper is very bulky, and they didn't really have that much stock in their storerooms within the store. So they would put all that product in the shelves, which can only occupy a limited number of toilet papers. And when people started to buy them up, it caused a panic situation because they were always running out. And that's not because of production in the factory, but more so the inbound and the operational limitations within the store. So outbound logistics includes, for Coles, that would be choosing where to open a store. So the outbound logistics pertains to being able to deliver to the customer. So part of that is distribution, which would mean the place, the store itself, and how many thousands of stores you would have. But it also includes delivery. So right now, these groceries are not delivering directly to customers who are ordering online. So that would be part of outbound logistics. And it's not easy if you think about it. You need to schedule it such a way that as the truck is delivering, it is delivering to several houses, hopefully within the same area. Otherwise, if it goes from area to area, then it would waste a lot of gas, a lot of fuel, a lot of the time as well. Part of the primary activities of Coles and Woolies is also marketing and advertising their services. And finally, the aftermarket service would include things like returns, returning a product if it is defective, um, returning products that are defective, or dealing with customer service in case there's a complaint and things like that. That's all part of the primary activities of companies like Coles and Woolworths. But there are, of course, support activities, things that are not really directly related to operations, but they nevertheless they form activities that the company needs in order to do well. For example, technology. So their cash registry systems have to be well developed, and they have to be operating. Otherwise, Coles cannot, ring up a sale very easily, and all that information is lost if they don't have a proper cash registry system. Procurement is part of this, by the way. So procurement is purchasing the products that they're going to be selling, and that's actually the critical activity for Coles and Woolies. They have to be able to choose the products that they will sell, and of course, not carry the products that are not being sold. So in other words, if a product is not selling well, they shouldn't be carrying these products, because then it would be a waste of their space. Okay. So the value chain model, what it really does is it gives you an idea on where your costs are and where you can add value which basically your activities in both primary and support help you create a larger margin. So if you're doing very well in these primary activities, you're able to cut your costs down, bring down your costs, and therefore you're able to make more money. Okay, so the margin between your price and your costs are higher. So an example of costs and what drives these costs to go up or down are the following factors, really, really important factors. So for example, economies of scale. Now, why is it that Kohl's can offer low price grocery prices? Again, if you compare, say if you buy a can of Coke or I don't know, a stick of butter from Kohl's, most likely it will be a few cents cheaper than if you were to buy that from, say, IGA or a smaller grocery chain. And the reason for that is the economies of scale. Kohl's is able to negotiate better prices because of their clout and the number of stores that they have. So even a manufacturer can have economies of scale, which means they are actually able to cut the price or the cost rather of their product the more that they manufacture. So the more they manufacture, the more products they come up with, they are able to share that fixed cost across hundreds and thousands of more products, and therefore they can afford to actually bring down their price if they have to, and to beat their competitor. So if you're a small company and you're competing against a big company, you'll never be able to compete in terms of price because of the economies of scale. The big company can always beat you because of the number of products it sells. So usually price is not a good way to compete against big companies. Capacity utilization. So how well are you using your factories? How well are you using your warehouses and operations? How much time does it take for you to coordinate within your company? The slower you are in coordinating, that means it usually drives up costs as well. What activities can be shared within businesses in your organization? Can you share resources? Now, if you're not able to share activities and resources, that usually means higher costs. Are you vertically integrated? Now, this is a really good discussion. Does everybody know what vertical integration means? Let me just pause our recording for a moment. All right, so I'm gonna just leave this here, but basically there are other cost drivers, including the buying and selling process, how well you procure items. For example, how Kohl's buying other products from manufacturers like Coca-Cola, how well are they able to drive down the price using their leverage? Knowing that if you're Coca-Cola, you don't have a choice but to deal with Kohl's. If Kohl's says to you, give me a 15% discount, Coca-Cola will be it will be very difficult for them to refuse such requests. Although Coke itself is probably a bad example because Coca-Cola's brand is so strong that if Coca-Cola says, no, this is my price and I'm not going to bring that down, Kohl's really would have little bargaining power. Which, by the way, this is an example of Porter's model, because when the five forces model looks at the bargaining power of your suppliers. If some suppliers, for example, for Kohl's, don't have any bargaining power because they have no choice but to sell their products for Kohl's or Woolworths. Otherwise, they're going to lose money. So in that case, the bargaining power of Kohl's and Woolies is very strong. They're able to bring down the price. However, if you're Coca-Cola, you're in the soft drink industry, you have more bargaining power as opposed to Kohl's. Okay, so just a little bit of a side discussion there. Okay, this is another discussion that I hope you guys can help me out with. So I promise you that we'll talk about branding. So brand as a resource. So it's something that is an intangible thing but it's actually quite important, and it could be a strength that you could use as a company. But what's interesting is James Dyson, who, by the way, is the owner and inventor of the Dyson vacuum cleaner. Have you? And we said that there are different approaches to branding, such as using a brand name that's not part of your company name, or using your company name as the brand. In terms of Google, it used to be called Google. Now they are Alphabet Company, and they are actually using Google as a brand for internet services. But they have also other brands that you might not have heard about. This is interesting. Waymo, and they're developing this service, which is autonomous driving. In other words, a driverless car. And that's really exciting news. One day, you won't need a driver. So when you call Uber, Uber will send a car over without a driver, and you can be driven to wherever you want to go using the machine. So reputation and branding. Many companies, what they do is they purchase brands, which could have been owned by another company, but they just acquired it and basically started. Acquired it means they purchased it. So an example would be Listerine. So Listerine is a brand of mouthwash, previously owned a long time ago by Warner Lambert. Warner Lambert, yes. Then passed on from company to company, went to Pfizer, and eventually it's now owned by Johnson & Johnson. It's the same brand, different manufacturer. So the formulation is probably the same, but the manufacturer has changed because they purchased the brand. So there could be a strategic reason for this. In fact, if you read on, there are many companies that want to enter a market and they don't want to create their own brand, so they purchase a leading brand instead. Okay, let me close it by watching a video about branding. So I hope I can get that to go.